When the collective obligation first dropped alongside the Vow of the Disciple raid and the Witch Queen, early reports were that the weapon was cool, but ultimately way too difficult to leverage. The requirements for getting the Void Leeching exotic perks up and running were steep, and often required additional teammates working alongside you to apply debuffs for you to steal quickly and use often. So the gun was either swiftly sent to the vault, or other players simply chose not to bother grinding for one. Raid exotics are already hard to get, so if the weapon wasn't going to be rewarding, then it wasn't worth people's time. But the collective obligation got a buff not too long ago that completely changed the requirements for leeching and then dishing out on command many different void debuffs. Getting supercharged enhanced bullets is now easy as pie, and everyone who continues to say this weapon is subpar is either lying or blissfully ignorant about what it can do. So you can imagine my surprise when this weapon finally dropped for me this past weekend after more than 80 looted clears of Ralk, and I began to discover what this thing could do. Let's dive into it. But first things first, let's talk about the exotic perks of obligation and how to activate them now. Then we'll get into the base stats of the weapon, which are worth talking about, and then how I integrated the obligation into an absolutely ridiculous triple 100 build for my Void Walker that allows me to have lots of uptime in a Crucible match of the Void Leech. So, quick overview. The collective obligation has the ability to absorb void debuffs and store them in the gun, multiple debuffs at once. And then the user can activate those debuffs on command and apply them to all the bullets that you fire from the collective obligation for 10 seconds. So your bullets could suppress, weaken, or make the enemy volatile, or do all three at the same time even. That's pretty freaking cool. But how do you leech those debuffs and store them in the gun? Well, there's 3 ways to leech. The first is by killing an enemy that has weaken, volatile, or suppression applied to them. So, for example, I can hit someone with my Pocket Singularity and then finish them off with the Pulse. Now my weapon has successfully stored the volatile debuff, and I can then switch firing modes and dish out volatile charged bullets. I can throw a suppressor grenade and then finish them off with the Pulse. Now I have suppressing bullets. I can tag someone with my Child of the Old Gods and then finish them off with the Pulse. Now I have weakening bullets. The second way to store debuffs is actually to get hit with a weaken, suppression, or volatile debuff yourself. You get caught in a tether, now I immediately have Void Leech charged. Get tagged by an Old God's Orb. Get hit with a suppressor. Whatever void debuff you receive will immediately be stored in your gun. No kill required. This will literally make you run into Old God's Orbs on purpose just to get a free debuff for your bullets. You'll walk into tethers after the hunter dies on purpose just to get the effects. You can turn your enemy's abilities back against them, and that's super freaking cool. And the final way to store these debuffs is to get 2 full bursts, 6 bullets, into an enemy that has a debuff applied to them. This doesn't happen often in PvP. Usually if they're debuffed, then 6 bullets is probably going to kill them at that point. But it does happen from time to time. Also worth noting, the collective obligation has a secondary perk called Umbral Sustenance, which reloads the weapon anytime you gain a Void Overshield, activate or refresh Devour, or become invisible, giving each subclass ways of building into it. So that's what you can do with this thing. Leech debuffs off targets, or even yourself, and then dish those debuffs out on command in the form of Void-empowered bullets. This is super fun in PvP. Shooting an aping titan with a jug shield up with suppressing bullets and seeing his visible confusion is a whole new kind of dopamine hit. Now, I'll unpack how I built into this gun to fully leverage its capabilities in PvP in a minute, but first let's talk about the base stats on this gun because they're important. The collective obligation is an adaptive frame pulse. For some people, that's a turnoff, but it's not for me. I'm approaching 10,000 Crucible kills on my 3rd Axiom. I love adaptives. Before that, it was the Gion 7, the last Perdition. I've always loved these pulses and found them to be heckin' underrated. Everyone focuses on optimal TTK like it's the only thing that matters, but frankly, people often miss. They often miss the 2-burst kill on a messenger or the perfect 3-tap with a 140. Adaptives, they are consistent. They're easy to use, stable, they have good range. I like consistency. The collective obligation has 49 range, which is on the upper end of most adaptives. It has 70 stability, which is very high for an adaptive. 51 handling, 56 reload speed, 67 aim assist, a zoom value of 17, and a perfectly vertical recoil direction of 100. The long and the short of it is that this pulse rifle has superb base stats. The third Axiom is the only adaptive pulse that I believe is a better raw dueler, just because the Axiom has a stacked perk pool and a zoom value of 18. But other than that, not too many adaptive pulses can stand next to the collective obligation and look good. It's at the top end in every stat category. The thing I think that can make this gun better is a catalyst, since it doesn't have one yet. One that gives the weapon Wellspring or Repulsor Brace. Wellspring would give more uptime to the abilities that you're using to queue up the leeching effects, regardless of what you build into, whether it's strength, discipline, or whatever it may be. Repulsor Brace would help you chain kills by applying an overshield to you when you successfully kill an enemy with a void debuff on them, which is exactly what you should be doing with this gun. So that would help take this gun to the next level, I think, is a killer catalyst that integrates well with what the gun already does. Now let's talk builds. Let me really quickly just address PvE. There are people who use this gun in Grandmaster Nightfalls, Master Heists, Dungeons, Raids. That's because this weapon can be built into in such a way that you have constant uptime of volatile rounds. And you can actually out DPS most rocket launchers straight up against majors and champions when you get the leeching rolling. If you're looking to see just what this thing can do in PvE and how to build into it, instead of making a video about it myself, I'll just refer you to one that has already been made after this gun got its buff. There's a YouTuber named Maven who has a killer video breaking down a build that sends the obligation through the roof in PvE. She talks aspects, fragments, exotic armor, how to take advantage of the leeching debuffs, and more. The video is to the point, easy to follow, and accurately explains everything you need to know for PvE, so I'll leave a link to it in the pinned comment and in the description. If you go over there, hey, reply to the comment that I already left on her video to let me know that you moseyed on over there to show support for our talented community members who fly under the radar. Now for PvP, I assembled what I believe to be an absolutely ridiculous build for sixes. I want to apply lots of debuffs so I can leech lots of debuffs. So I'm running 100 strength so I can throw a lot of singularities. I'm running 100 discipline so I can throw a lot of grenades. And I'm running 100 recovery so I can send out a lot of old gods babies. Triple 100s, all focused on dishing out debuffs. But I also want my pulse rifle to 2-burst kill. So I'm running swift charge and high energy fire for that, like I usually do with adaptive pulse rifles. I'm also running the Mantle of Battle Harmony to charge my super faster and then give me the damage buff of absorption cells to let me 2-burst people after that initial kill. And that happens way more than you might think. I'm running Old Gods and Devour aspects, and I'm running echoes of expulsion, instability, leeching, and dilation. I'm not running undermining because I don't really like the minus 20 discipline penalty for PvP. I could live with it in PvE where Devour is going to be active a lot more and giving me more grenade energy back consistently, but in PvP, I don't think the weakening grenades are worth the trade-off. So there it is. This build sent me from 0 to well over 500 kills in PvP on the obligation in no time flat, just 2 gaming sessions. This pulse blew me away. It was so much better than people seemed to believe. I had a riot running it and having a build that's much more engaged and rewarding than just a basic point and shoot build. I know I'll continue to use this weapon and this build in the near future as well, and I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of the collective obligation? Does it look pretty fun? Do you have it? And if so, how has it treated you? Let me know in the comments. Thanks as always for watching my content. If you enjoyed the video, would you consider leaving a like on it and subscribe for additional Destiny 2 content? Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the Crucible.
Together as one. I love it. Ikora would be proud of you, Warlock. Enemy claims Zone A. Zone C captured.